Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission here is always to take that massive, overwhelming stack of articles, interviews, and sources about a topic and just synthesize it all down.
Right, into the most essential, the most fascinating, and, truly actionable knowledge.
We are here to give you the shortcut to being the most informed person in the room.
And today, we are diving deep into a true giant of modern television comedy, Michael Schur.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't just a career retrospective. I mean, this is really about decoding the playbook of a writer, a producer, a director who fundamentally changed the tone of mainstream network comedy.
Absolutely. When you look at his full art, from cutting his teeth at SNL and perfecting that, that cringe comedy of The Office.
Yeah.
To creating the pure humanistic joy of Parks and Recreation and in the ethical labyrinth of The Good Place. You realize he didn't just write successful shows.
Oh.
He pioneered a new genre. Optimistic comedy centered on this deep intellectual curiosity.
His signature is just unmistakable. You have these large ensemble casts, this rapid-fire dialogue, and characters who are, they're often fundamentally good-hearted, even if they're deeply flawed.
Right.
His shows are structurally sound, they're relentlessly funny, but they carry this surprising philosophical weight. You don't just laugh. You often leave a Schur show thinking about sincerity or duty or just what it means to be a decent person.
That is precisely our mission today. We need to extract the essential knowledge about his creative process. We need to examine his key collaborations and trace that surprisingly highbrow intellectual foundation.
We're looking for the why behind the what.
Exactly. How did an English major who wrote his thesis on a famously dense novel become the architect of highly accessible, mass-market TV optimism?
And we have the perfect recent marker to anchor this whole legacy analysis. Just this past May, in 2025, Schur was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That career pinnacle gives us a wonderful vantage point to step back, analyze his entire body of work, and figure out exactly how he injected deep ethical questions right into the heart of the sitcom.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning with his intellectual roots and early life. We're talking Michael Herbert Schur, born October 29th, 1975 in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
The origin story here is deceptively simple, but the nuances are crucial. He grew up primarily in West Hartford, Connecticut. And when we look for the genesis of his philosophical preoccupations, you have to look at his family background, specifically concerning faith.
Right.
So his parents were ethnically Jewish on his father's side, Warren Schur, who is an atheist. And Methodist on his mother's side, Ann Herbert.
That structural detail is massive when you consider his later work, particularly The Good Place. The sources all confirm he was raised without religion.
He was.
He wasn't given a definitive theological answer about morality or the afterlife.
Exactly. And just think about that for a moment. He was exposed to these different major Western ethical frameworks, Jewish heritage, a Christian background, but without any formal doctrine being imposed on him.
So he had the concepts, but not the dogma.
Precisely. This setup allowed him, as an adult and as a writer, to approach these universal moral questions. Why be good? What happens after we die? With a kind of neutral, highly academic, almost scientific curiosity. He wasn't looking for a pre-established theological conclusion.
And that lack of dogma seems to fuel the kind of critical inquiry that we see manifest in his academic life, too. This wasn't a writer who just happened to fall into comedy.
No, not at all.
He was an incredibly serious student. He graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Harvard University in 1997 with a BA in English. That's a signal of, extremely high intellectual achievement.
And he wasn't just hitting the books. While he was immersed in English literature, he was also deeply steeped in the institutional comedy structure that Harvard fosters. He was the president of the Harvard Lampoon.
The Lampoon, which, as we know, has been a breeding ground for countless comedy giants, from Conan O'Brien to, half the writing staff of The Simpsons.
Exactly. And within that environment, he forged these key relationships that would define his professional life decades later.
Specifically, his Harvard classmate was Rashida Jones.
Yes.
And that is a foundational collaboration.
It really is, because that partnership spans wildly different genres. They worked together on The Office, then they cemented their legacy, defining the tone of Parks and Recreation.
Hmm.
And later, they co-wrote one of the darkest Black Mirror episodes. It really shows how much that academic environment was also an essential high-level networking ground for a very specific type of writer.
It's the ultimate example of your college crew turning into your professional dynasty.
It really is.
But I'm still trying to connect the dots here.
Yeah.
A Harvard English major to the king of accessible network comedy. What was the actual spark? What got him hooked?
Well, according to his own recounting, his earliest comedy influence wasn't a movie or a TV show. It was reading. Specifically, reading Woody Allen's 1975 collection of humorous essayistic fiction, Without Feathers. He was only 11 years old.
Wow.
And the anecdote is that he stayed up reading it until 4 a.m.
That is such a specific literary starting point for a TV writer. I mean, Without Feathers is rooted in absurdism, in essay structure, a kind of self-aware neurosis.
It is.
And you can see echoes of that density of dialogue and that intellectual playfulness in his later scripts.
Yeah.
He also cited Monty Python and The Simpsons as early influences, which gives us that perfect trifecta.
It does. Highbrow literary humor, surreal British sketch, and modern American animation.
But the deepest intellectual nugget, the one that truly sets him apart, connects directly back to his senior thesis.
Yes.
Michael Schur wrote his undergraduate thesis on David Foster Wallace's monumental 1996 novel, Infinite Jest.
Okay, let's just pause on that. Infinite Jest. For listeners who maybe haven't attempted the 1,000-plus page behemoth.
Which is most of us.
Which is most of us, yes. This is arguably one of the most structurally demanding, maximalist, and philosophically dense American novels of the late 20th century. It deals with addiction, entertainment, irony, and this desperate search for sincerity in a postmodern world.
And this is where the intellectual commitment isn't just academic, it's a creative fuel source.
Yeah.
Wallace's work is famously about trying to escape irony and cynicism, striving for real human sincerity.
Right.
Now think about the trajectory of Schur's career. He went from writing the dry, often cynical mockumentary, The Office, which relies so heavily on observational irony, to creating Parks and Recreation and The Good Place, which are just defined by their sincerity and their optimism.
So his career trajectory is essentially a professional attempt to solve the central philosophical problem of infinite jest.
It really is. He rejected the default mode of irony he mastered on The Office to pursue the sincerity demanded by DFW's philosophy.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic analytical connection.
And it doesn't stop there. Schur once held the film rights to the novel, which shows a very real professional commitment to translating that unique, maximalist, and complex worldview onto the screen. It wasn't just a college paper for him, it was a defining passion.
And we even see a direct, sort of bizarre callback to the novel in his non-TV work. He collaborated with the band The Decemberists to direct the music video for their song, Calamity Song.
They did.
And that video was explicitly based on a specific detailed scenario described in Infinite Jest.
Yes, the game of Eschaton. For those who don't know the novel, Eschaton is this mock nuclear war game played on a tennis court, which requires these elaborate mathematical calculations of where the missiles, which are tennis balls, land.
Right.
It's a perfect encapsulation of Wallace's style, taking something mundane like tennis and turning it into a hyper-complex, terrifying, high-stakes metaphor.
It's amazing. He's taking the philosophical underpinnings of his Harvard thesis, the ideas of entertainment, addiction, complexity, absurdity, and weaving them into music videos and the actual DNA of his sitcoms.
It really confirms that the seriousness of his academic life isn't separate from his creative life.
No.
It's the intellectual engine that drives the whole operation.
And that engine requires an apprenticeship, which brings us to Section 2. The apprenticeship and crossover success, covering the crucial years from 1998 to 2008. This is where he learns how to produce content under immense pressure.
The journey begins, of course, with Saturday Night Live.
Yes.
He started as a writer in 1998, and he stayed there until 2004, writing a staggering 138 episodes.
That 6-year tenure at SNL it's maybe the most intense training ground in the entire television industry.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, think about the technical demands. You had to write, pitch, produce, and often rewrite sketches in a cycle of 5 grueling days, ending with a live broadcast.
It's high volume, high pressure, and it requires immediate adaptability. That intense structural training is essential for a future showrunner who will eventually be balancing 3 or 4 different series at the same time.
And it's also fun trivia that the sources confirm he first applied in late 1997, but the writing slot went to Tina Fey instead. He got hired that winter, which just shows that sometimes being slightly delayed leads to a major career pivot later on.
His ascent there was swift. By 2001, he had risen to become the producer of Weekend Update.
And that's not just a writing job. That's a management and structural role, steering the show's most important and often its most political segment. It demands satirical clarity, organizational skill, incredible timing, all while managing major talent.
Here's where the high-pressure training really crystallized, though. His very first show as the Weekend Update producer was SNL's first episode after the September 11 attacks.
I mean, just imagine that.
That is a highly stressful, defining, and unforgettable moment in television history. Having to navigate comedy in the shadow of profound national tragedy, figuring out what you can and cannot joke about.
And how to do it.
And ultimately, how to use humor to try and heal or reflect the national mood. That experience would fundamentally shape his approach to comedy moving forward. He learned early on the power and the responsibility of humor in the public sphere.
And the quality of his work was recognized. In 2002, he won his first Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a variety series, sharing that honor as part of the SNL writing team.
So he leaves SNL an Emmy winner, structurally trained, and having survived a high-stakes baptism by fire.
And that high-stakes training prepared him perfectly for the next phase. The transition out of sketch comedy and into the serialized single-camera sitcom format.
Right.
He left SNL in 2004 to join NBC's nascent experimental project, The Office.
The Office era, running from 2005 to 2013. He became a producer and writer, writing 12 episodes. His immediate success here was undeniable. He won the 2006 Emmy for Outstanding Comedy Series as part of the producing team for that foundational first season.
And it's important to note the technical shift here. Moving from the rapid, isolated structure of a sketch to the mockumentary format requires a completely different writing muscle.
A totally different muscle.
One focused on character consistency, long-form emotional arcs, and sustaining that uneasy, often painful observational irony. He mastered that very quickly.
We have specific writing examples from this time, too. He co-wrote the ancillary The Office, The Accountant's webisodes with Paul Lieberstein,
Right.
which shows his early understanding of how a brand could be extended into new digital formats, which was really cutting edge for the time.
But for fans, we have to address the iconic, bizarre on-screen presence that he reluctantly embodied. The Mose Schrute detail.
Oh, we have to talk about Mose.
Schur appeared as Dwight Schrute's cousin Mose in 13 episodes.
And Mose is a true comedic oddity. He's the physical manifestation of the weird, unsettling world of the Schrute farm.
We all know the key appearances. Initiation, money, when Jim and Pam stay overnight, the deposition, koi pond, counseling, and finale.
He was essentially the physical comedy relief for the deeply weird aspects of Dwight's life.
What's truly illuminating, though, is Schur's own confessed discomfort with this role. He's famously stated that playing Mose was a waking nightmare.
A waking nightmare. Why do you think he felt such dissonance? He's clearly comfortable writing humor but not performing it.
Well, I think it speaks volumes about his creative identity. Schur is a creator who thrives on control, on structure, on intellectual design.
Okay.
And being Mose meant being messy, physically uncomfortable, running with a stick, riding a horse into a bed, being covered in beet juice. He preferred the calm, methodical control of the writer's room, shaping the narrative, rather than being subjected to the performance demands of physical cringe comedy.
So his passion is the architecture of comedy, not necessarily the acting.
That makes perfect sense. He was the puppet master, not the puppet. And during this period, he wasn't exclusively tied to The Office. In 2005, he co-produced HBO's critically respected, though short-lived, series The Comeback.
Which is a crucial early move. It shows his immediate adaptability across different networks and tones. I mean, The Comeback is a much more acute, uncomfortable, and specifically industry-focused satire than The Office.
Absolutely.
So by 2008, he had proven he could succeed in sketch, mockumentary, and high-quality cable satire. He was ready to launch his own brand.
Which brings us to Section 3. Defining the style, the co-creation era, spanning 2008 to 2015. This is the period where the Michael Schur playbook of optimism was fully codified and perfected.
And it begins with Parks and Recreation, running from 2009 to 2015. He co-created this show with Greg Daniels, his collaborator from The Office.
Right.
And the initial concept, back in 2008, was actually proposed as a direct spin-off of The Office.
And that's the key inflection point, isn't it? Schur wisely chose to pivot. He realized that if the show was a direct spin-off, it would be saddled with the deep-seated cynicism and cringe humor of The Office.
Always been, yeah.
To create a truly optimistic, character-driven show focused on government employees trying their best. He needed a clean break.
And that strategic decision allowed Leslie Knope and the town of Pawnee to develop their own distinct warm identity. Parks and Recreation became the deliberate and necessary rejection of the observational cruelties sometimes inherent in the mockumentary style he himself had perfected.
And like many Schur projects, the path wasn't immediately easy. It followed that classic Schur-era creative arc. Initial negative reviews for the first short season, mirroring the difficult launch of The Office, but it found its voice and received massive critical acclaim starting in the second season.
Right, once Leslie Knope was softened and the characters were allowed to genuinely like each other.
Exactly. And his dedication was total during this run. He served as executive producer, he wrote 19 episodes, and directed 9 episodes. He wasn't just the conceptual architect. He was actively shaping the tone, the pacing, and the execution in the writer's room and behind the camera.
But speaking of shaping the tone, we need to talk about the truly bizarre, comedic double life he maintained simultaneously.
The secret identity.
The secret identity of Ken Tremendous.
This is one of the best analytical nuggets we have. Michael Schur wrote high-level analytical sports commentary, primarily focusing on baseball, under the pseudonym Ken Tremendous.
For the influential sports journalism blog, Fire Joe Morgan.
Just think about that dichotomy. You're running a massive network sitcom, dealing with the daily crises of production, and then you're going home and anonymously writing these sharp, analytical takedowns of baseball conventional wisdom under a fake name.
It had to be a complete intellectual release valve for him. He was using his writing discipline, his analytical brain, but applying it to a completely different passion.
And the name became his alter ego. He even resurrected the pen name in 2011 to write for SB Nation's Baseball Nation site. To this day, @KenTremendous remains his Twitter handle.
It's a constant nod to the fact that his identity is rooted as much in sharp critical analysis as it is in comedy creation.
And that sports interest manifested in audio form, too. In 2013, he formalized that dual interest with the PosCast, which he created with the renowned baseball writer Joe Posnanski.
And the PosCast is a fantastic reflection of Schur's specific, highly intellectual absurdity. It focuses primarily on baseball, but it intentionally meanders into other subjects and hosts these famous drafts of random items.
I love those. Drafts of potato chips, drafts of cartoon characters, drafts of mundane objects.
And they explicitly pride themselves on the podcast being meaningless.
Which is such a hilarious juxtaposition to the creator of The Good Place, a show dedicated to finding the ultimate meaning in existence.
He needs this mental sandbox for the meaningless and the absurd.
He does. And they pulled in serious talent to participate in the absurdity, including Parks and Rec star Nick Offerman and Cincinnati Reds first baseman Joey Votto.
It's a wonderful intersection of his highly focused personal interest in baseball and his immense professional contacts in Hollywood.
So that period of co-creation really solidified his stylistic template. It continued with Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which ran from 2013 to 2021.
He co-created this cop comedy with Daniel J. Gore.
And Brooklyn Nine-Nine maintained that signature Schur optimism, a positive, functional workplace environment centered on a diverse cast that grows and supports each other.
It successfully ported the template established in Pawnee to a police precinct.
The series had a major logistical challenge during its run, though. It premiered on Fox in 2013, but when Fox canceled it after 5 seasons, NBC famously picked it up for its 6th season.
Which was a major show of network faith in the Schur brand and the quality of the show's existing audience.
Definitely. And Schur wrote 2 episodes and directed 2 episodes, keeping his hand in the specific execution.
So by 2016, the template was set. Schur had demonstrated that high-quality, high-concept, humanistic comedy that prioritizes kindness and character growth over cynicism was not only possible but incredibly popular across multiple platforms and settings.
And that, of course, led directly into Section 4, which is arguably the highest intellectual peak of his career, Philosophy and the Peak of Humanism, starting in 2016.
This entire section is built around The Good Place.
Completely.
The Good Place is the ultimate realization of that Harvard thesis and that non-dogmatic upbringing we discussed earlier. It premiered in 2016 and became a genuine cultural phenomenon for NBC.
It took the format of a supernatural sitcom and centered the entire narrative engine on moral philosophy and the concept of what it means to be a truly good person.
It's a genius concept because it allowed him to take these dense ethical concepts and, as he famously said, smuggle them into mainstream primetime comedy.
The show introduced millions of viewers to ideas that are usually reserved for university philosophy departments.
Absolutely.
Viewers were learning about the ethical theory of consequentialism through utilitarianism, the idea that the morality of an action is judged purely by its outcome versus deontology.
Right, which argues that actions are intrinsically right or wrong based on a set of rules or duties, regardless of the consequences.
And he did this conversationally. He made moral philosophy, which can be incredibly dry, the central narrative tension of a TV show starring Kristen Bell and Ted Danson.
This is the intellectual curiosity of the Infinite Jest thesis made accessible to a mass audience.
What's also brilliant about The Good Place is its constant narrative reinvention. The core twist at the end of Season 1, revealing they were in the bad place, showed that Schur understood that to keep a high-concept show fresh, he had to constantly destroy and rebuild the philosophical framework.
That structural maximalism owes a clear debt to the DFW sensibility.
And the recognition for this ambition was significant, particularly for the finale episode, Whenever You're Ready.
That finale, which provided a deeply moving, definitive ending to a show about eternity, was nominated for Outstanding Writing for a Comedy Series at the 2020 Emmys.
But the award that speaks most to the show's unique blend of sci-fi and philosophy is that it won the Ray Bradbury Award for Outstanding Dramatic Presentation in 2020.
That is an incredibly rare honor for a sitcom finale, tying it directly to the speculative fiction and science fiction traditions.
And the philosophical universe didn't end with the screen. In 2022, Schur expanded his intellectual territory by releasing his first book, How to Be Perfect, the correct answer to every moral question.
This is the ultimate synthesis. The book is the formalized, non-fiction continuation of the themes and research that drove the show.
Right.
It provides a funny, accessible take on the ethical philosophy questions that the writer's room spent 4 years researching and debating. It essentially confirms that his engagement with material like T.M. Scanlon and Immanuel Kant is a genuine, lifelong intellectual pursuit, not just a gimmick for a sitcom.
Now, speaking of intellectual pursuits, we have to address the very strange collaboration that happened almost concurrently with The Good Place's premiere.
Oh, yeah!
In 2016, Michael Schur co-wrote the teleplay for the Black Mirror episode Nosedive.
This is so fascinating because it proves his flexibility outside of the bounds of pure optimistic comedy. Nosedive is a chilling, dystopian examination of social scoring, status anxiety, and forced validation, based on a story by Charlie Brooker.
And who did he co-write it with?
His Harvard classmate, Rashida Jones.
It highlights how that foundational relationship is versatile enough to tackle extreme dark satire just as easily as gentle park administrators.
The contrast is jarring. In the same year, he's creating a show, The Good Place, that posits the possibility of human moral improvement, and co-writing a show, Nosedive, that posits total technological and societal subjugation to cynicism and performativity.
It reinforces the idea that he has deeply mastered both the cynical, observational mode and the sincere, humanistic mode.
Absolutely.
And looking at his recent and ongoing projects, the Schur empire continues to operate at a high level, both in direct creation and through executive production, showing his desire to elevate diverse voices.
We see him returning to co-creation with Rutherford Falls, a scripted comedy starring Ed Helms that premiered on Peacock in 2021.
Right.
And just recently, in 2024, he debuted A Man on the Inside, a Netflix comedy series starring his longtime muse, Ted Danson.
Reuniting the star of The Good Place. And that new Netflix series is particularly interesting because it's based on the Chilean documentary The Mole Agent.
It is.
Which shows that he is still looking for novel ways to blend high-concept, character-driven material with his unique comedic voice.
And perhaps just as important as his creations is his role as an executive producer, where he uses his reputation to elevate prestige streaming projects. He served in that capacity for the critically beloved Master of None, which ran from 2015 to 2021, and for the highly acclaimed series Hacks, which began in 2021 and is ongoing.
Let's focus on the EP role for a moment, especially Hacks. Hacks is often defined by a cynical, sharp edge, the brutal realities of the comedy world, and generational conflict.
It is.
Why would the king of kindness, Michael Schur, choose to champion a show with such a distinctly cynical voice?
That's a probing question. I think it highlights his maturity as a producer. His brand isn't simply nice. It's about quality writing and complex character relationships.
It's about the craft.
It's about the craft. Hacks might be cynical, but it shares that core DNA with Schur's work. A focus on two deeply flawed people finding meaning, friendship, and professional respect through intense structured dialogue. He recognizes excellent writing, regardless of whether the tone matches his personal creations.
And his involvement ensures his legacy is tied to the best of contemporary streaming comedy, proving his influence transcends his own specific stylistic mold.
Exactly.
That transition leads us perfectly into Section 5, the Honors Awards and Industry Footprint. We need to summarize that signature style and analyze the track record of recognition.
The signature style, now fully established, is clear. Large, diverse ensemble casts, an ability to create breakout, iconic stars like Amy Poehler, Nick Offerman, and Ted Danson.
Right.
And a focus on characters who are consistently attempting to be decent, finding strong, lasting friendships and functional romantic relationships. It's a genuine rejection of the idea that good comedy must be based on meanness or sustained cringe.
So let's track that impressive Emmy recognition track record as of September 2024. He has been nominated for 21 Primetime Emmy Awards across his career.
An astonishing number.
It really is, and it speaks to his enduring relevance.
But let's look at the specific wins, because they tell the story of his career trajectory. He has 3 major wins. The first came early, for Saturday Night Live in 2002 for writing. That's the apprenticeship phase.
Right.
The second was for The Office in 2006 for Outstanding Comedy Series, the mastery of the mockumentary.
And the third win is the most recent, showing his continuing influence. A win for Hacks in 2024, also for Outstanding Comedy Series, cementing his role as an architect of prestige comedy across platforms.
The nominations are just as revealing of the sustained quality of his self-created work. Both Parks and Recreation and The Good Place received multiple nominations for Outstanding Comedy Series.
Parks in 2011 and 2015, and The Good Place in 2019 and 2020.
That consistent nomination history shows that the industry recognized his shift toward humanistic comedy as quality work, not just, sentimental fluff.
And the final Good Place script, Whenever You're Ready, also received a writing nomination. It's so rare for a show to maintain that level of writing quality right up until the last frame.
And beyond the Emmys, his peers in the industry, the writers themselves, have recognized his skill via the Writers Guild of America Awards.
The WGA.
He shared a WGA win for Hacks in 2022 for both news series and comedy series.
And we can also track his individual script excellence through the WGA history. He was nominated for the Episodic Comedy WGA Award for the emotional high point of Parks and Recreation, the episode Leslie and Ben in 2013.
A great episode.
And he won for the Office episode The Job in 2007, co-written with Paul Lieberstein. These awards single out the specific high-quality scripts that define those seminal series.
Now, stepping outside the creative trophies, we have to acknowledge a crucial detail that speaks to his standing and commitment to the industry community.
His participation in the WGA's stand against the ATA in 2019.
Right.
For listeners who may not recall the specifics of that major industry upheaval, the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, led a widespread movement against the ATA, the Association of Talent Agents. What was the core issue there, and why was Schur's involvement so significant?
Well, the central conflict was about packaging fees. Essentially, agents were collecting these massive fees from studios for putting together or packaging writers, directors, and actors for a project.
And that fee was paid by the studio before the writer was paid.
Exactly. So the WGA argued this created a massive conflict of interest, incentivizing the agent to prioritize the agency's fee over securing the best deal for the individual writer.
And the WGA's strategic move was to demand that writers fire their agents unless the agents agreed to end packaging.
And Schur, being a highly influential showrunner with tremendous clout, publicly fired his agent as part of that movement.
Which was a huge deal.
It was. That action was not just about solidarity. It was a powerful statement of commitment to the broader community of writers and their fight for fair compensation and transparency. It's another layer to his character. He's not just interested in ethics on screen, he practices them in his professional life.
That really rounds out the professional profile. But we do have a few key non-career personal details that add some texture to the man behind the optimistic empire.
The most famous personal connection is his marriage to J.J. Philbin.
She was formerly a writer for the Fox drama The O.C., and for those who are keeping track of celebrity progeny, she is the daughter of the late famous television host Regis Philbin.
That is a wonderful connection between the worlds of high-concept comedy and classic daytime television celebrity.
And we actually have a fun piece of trivia connecting Schur back to his wife's career. He had a small acting role in the OC episode, The Case of the Franks, in 2007.
Probably a quick favor done thanks to that connection. It shows he was always willing to embrace the absurdity of Hollywood, even if he found the actual act of acting a waking nightmare.
Right. And finally, a small but important detail consistent with the ethos of kindness and reducing harm that pervades his best-known work. Michael Schur is a vegetarian.
It's a choice that perfectly aligns with the character and ethical framework he promotes, a commitment to conscious living that extends beyond the writer's room.
So if we look back at the whole journey, it's truly remarkable. We started with a Harvard English major, obsessed with the structural demands and philosophical sincerity of David Foster Wallace,
Hmm.
a man who cut his teeth on the high-pressure, high-stakes political satire of SNL after 9/11.
He took that foundation, mastered the cynical observation of the office, and then deliberately pivoted to create his own humanistic brand, a series of workplace comedies that prioritize kindness, joy, and deep friendship.
And then he achieved the ultimate synthesis, using the sitcom format to ask humanity's most fundamental ethical questions in The Good Place.
The conclusion we draw from this deep dive is that Michael Schur is perhaps the ultimate example of how genuine, deep intellectual curiosity can be synthesized, processed, and transformed into accessible and massively popular art.
He took high-minded philosophy, the complex search for the correct answer to every moral question, and turned it into comedy that doesn't just entertain, it encourages you to engage with the world more thoughtfully and compassionately.
His work is proof that you don't have to be cynical to be smart. You can use complexity and intelligence to build something optimistic.
And as we close this analysis on his tremendous legacy, I think we need to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought that ties back to the very first section of our conversation about his upbringing.
Consider that unique background. Raised without formal religion by an atheist father and a mother from a Christian tradition. He was exposed to multiple ethical frameworks, but no formal, definitive doctrine was imposed on him.
So how much did that early freedom, that lack of an institutional framework, actually enable him to create a show like The Good Place?
He wasn't constrained by needing to provide a specific pre-existing religious answer about morality or the afterlife.
The blank slate allowed him to build a brand new universal framework for ethical improvement, purely based on philosophy and human reason.
Perhaps the key to his massive success was his ability to approach morality with the pure, unbiased curiosity of an academic, a curiosity he initially honed by analyzing the greatest, most challenging novel of his generation. It's a question worth exploring and something to mull over the next time you watch Leslie Knope or Eleanor Shellstrop try to do the right thing regardless of the rules.